My name is Lily. I'm 28 years old, and I planned my sister's engagement party down to the last ribbon. I booked the venue, hired the florist, coordinated with the caterer, and spent 3 weekends hand-lettering place cards at my kitchen table. I paid for all of it. Not because anyone asked me to, because that's what I always did. I made things beautiful for people who barely noticed I was in the room. I didn't expect a standing ovation. I didn't even need a thank you. What I didn't expect was my mother standing at the head of that table with a champagne flute in her hand, smiling at 60 guests, and saying, "Even Lily managed to pull something off right for once." The laughter that followed was light, scattered, like people weren't sure if it was funny or not, so they hedged their bets with a polite chuckle. My sister covered her mouth and looked away. My brother raised his glass, and I sat very still in my chair with a smile I had been practicing my whole life. That night changed everything. Not because of what my mother said, but because of what I found out afterward. I had been running my own event planning business out of Nashville for 4 years. Small operation, just me and one part-time assistant, but we had built something real: weddings, corporate retreats, anniversary galas. I had a roster of preferred vendors I'd spent years cultivating, photographers who answered my calls on the first ring, florists who reserved their best inventory for my bookings, a catering team that let me pay net 30 because I had never once been late. My family knew about the business, the way families know about things they don't fully understand. My mother called it your little party thing. My brother, who I'll call Derek, asked me once if I could hook him up with some of my vendors because he was thinking about starting something similar. I told him gently that I'd be happy to make introductions after he had a business plan. He shrugged it off. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The engagement party was held at a renovated farmhouse outside the city. String lights, wildflower arrangements, a dessert table that had taken me 2 full days to style. My sister, Claire, had cried when she saw it. "Happy tears," she said. My mother had walked in, looked around, nodded once and said, "It's nice. A little over the top, but nice." I had swallowed that and kept moving. Dinner was at 7. By 7:30, the wine was flowing and the toasts had begun. Claire's fiancé spoke first, warm and genuine. His mother followed, sweet and a little teary. Then my mother stood up, and the room settled into an expectant quiet. She talked about Claire for maybe 2 minutes, her smile, her laugh, the way she had always known exactly what she wanted. Then she pivoted, glanced at me across the table with something that looked almost fond from a distance, and said it. We weren't sure how tonight would come together, honestly. Planning was never really Lily's strongest suit. But even Lily managed to pull something off right for once. She said it like it was a compliment, like she was being generous. I heard the laughter. I felt my cheeks go warm. And somewhere behind me, I heard my best friend Jordan set her fork down on her plate. Not loudly. Just a quiet, deliberate click that I noticed, because I had known her for 12 years. I didn't cry. I smiled, picked up my glass, and drank. But inside, something that had been bending for a very long time finally went straight. After the toasts, after the dancing, after Claire and her fiancé cut the cake I had ordered from a bakery 2 counties over, because Claire had mentioned in passing 8 months ago that she loved honey lavender, I found Jordan in the corner near the bar. She handed me a glass of water without being asked. "You okay?" she said. "I'm fine," I said. She looked at me the way people look at you when they know you're not fine, but they also know you're not ready to say so yet. "You planned this entire night, every detail." And she said that. She thinks it's a joke. Do you? I didn't answer. I just looked out at the room. My mother was laughing with Claire's future mother-in-law. Derek was taking a selfie near the floral arch I had designed. My father was nodding pleasantly at something someone was saying, the way he always did, present in body and absent in every way that mattered. I excused myself to check on the caterers. Standing in the hallway between the kitchen and the main hall, I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Force of habit, I had 6 unread messages, 2 from clients, 1 from a vendor, and 1 from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Saw your work referenced in the Holloway contract. Question about your template." I frowned and opened it. The sender was an event coordinator in Memphis. She was asking about a vendor coordination template, a specific one I had built from scratch 2 years ago, a private document that lived in my Google Drive. She said she had received it from someone at a networking event who described himself as a consultant in the event planning space. The name he had given was Derek Shaw. I read the email 3 times. Then I went back to the party and spent the rest of the night smiling like nothing had happened. Back at my apartment after midnight, I sat on the floor with my laptop and started pulling threads. Derek had launched an LLC 4 months ago. Event consulting, vendor coordination, corporate retreats. I found it in a 30-second public record search. The business name meant nothing to me, but the service list looked familiar. Too familiar. The language on his website, buried under a generic template, described vendor relationship management in phrasing I recognized because I had written it myself, in a guide I had put together for a workshop I presented at a small business conference 2 years prior. I had shared that guide with my mother afterward, sent it in an email with the subject line, "In case this is useful for anything." I opened my drive, sorted by last accessed. 3 of my template folders showed access from an IP address that was not mine, on dates I had not been near my computer. The most recent access was 11 days ago. My stomach didn't drop, it hardened. I had shared drive access with my mother during a chaotic stretch when I was traveling for a wedding in Nashville and needed her to forward something to a client. A temporary thing. I had forgotten to revoke it, and somewhere in those folders, Derek had helped himself to 4 years of my work. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text. I opened a new document and started listing everything I could confirm. Dates, file names, access logs, the Memphis coordinator's email, the public LLC filing, the website language. I added screenshots. I added timestamps. I worked until almost 3 in the morning, not out of anger, but out of a strange, cold clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop telling yourself a story and look directly at what is actually true. When I closed the laptop, I sat in the quiet for a while. I thought about the workshop guide. I thought about the vendor relationships I had spent years building, the photographers who knew my name, the florists who held inventory for me. I thought about Derek asking to be hooked up and me thinking it was a passing comment. I thought about how many times I had made something and watched someone else benefit from it while I smiled and said I didn't mind. I thought about my mother's voice. Even Lily managed to pull something off right for once. And I thought, no more. I did not make a scene at breakfast the next morning. My mother had texted the night before, asking everyone to come by her house for Sunday brunch, the way she always did after family events, as if the next day was a soft reset where nothing awkward had to be acknowledged. I showed up on time. Jordan had offered to come with me, and I had said yes. The kitchen smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls. Claire was already there, still glowing, showing her fiancé photos from the night before on her phone. Derek was at the counter eating, standing up, scrolling through something. My mother was arranging fruit with the precision of someone who needed everything to look effortless. I sat down. I poured coffee. I waited. It didn't take long. My mother started talking about the party. How beautiful it had been. How many compliments she'd received. Everyone kept asking who planned it, she said, not looking at me. I just said it was a family effort. Jordan's hand found my knee under the table. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady. Quick question. Do you still have access to my Google Drive? She blinked. Turned toward me with that particular expression she used when she wanted to seem confused but wasn't. I might. You gave it to me a while back. Why? Because someone accessed several of my working folders over the past few months. Documents I built for my business. Templates, vendor guides, client frameworks. A beat of silence. Derek didn't look up from his phone. And Derek, I said, turning to him. Congratulations on the LLC. I saw the website. Some of the service descriptions looked familiar. The kitchen went quiet in the way kitchens do, when everyone suddenly becomes very interested in their food. Derek set his phone down. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I kept my voice even. No heat, no trembling. I have the access logs. I have the dates. I have an email from a coordinator in Memphis who received one of my proprietary templates at a networking event, with your name attached to it. My mother cleared her throat. Lily, I don't think this is the time. When is the time, Mom? I looked at her calmly. After the next party I planned for free? After the next thing I build that someone else takes credit for? Claire looked up from her phone. Her fiancé quietly reached for his coffee. Derek crossed his arms. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It was just information. I didn't think you'd care. You didn't think I'd find out, I said. Jordan spoke then, quietly but clearly. She built those documents over 4 years. Every vendor relationship in those files took years to earn. You didn't just take information. You took infrastructure. Derek looked at her like she had no business being at this table. Then he looked back at me. It's not like you have a monopoly on event planning. No, I agreed. But I do have a right to my own work. My mother set down the fruit bowl. This feels very aggressive, Lily. We're family. I know, I nodded. Which is why I'm telling you directly before I decide what to do about it. I picked up my coffee. I revoked the drive access this morning. If anything else surfaces, I'll handle it the same way I'd handle it with anyone else. No one said anything for a long moment. Claire looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. My father had walked in somewhere in the middle of it, and was now standing in the doorway with the newspaper, frozen, like he had stepped into a different movie than the one he thought he was in. I finished my coffee, said goodbye to Claire, who hugged me a beat too long and didn't say anything, and then Jordan and I walked out to the car and drove in silence for 3 minutes before she said, "I'm proud of you." "I'm scared," I said. "Good," she said. That means it was real. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. Derek didn't call. My mother sent a text saying she hoped I wasn't going to blow things out of proportion. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I worked. I pulled together everything I had documented and sent a formal cease and desist through an attorney I had used for a contract dispute 2 years prior. She reviewed it within a day and said I had a solid basis. Derek's website updated 3 days later. The language I had written was gone. He didn't acknowledge that. Of course he didn't. But I kept digging. Not out of revenge, but out of due diligence. I requested records from the Memphis coordinator. I found 2 other instances where my templates had been forwarded without my permission, both through that same shared drive access, both to people in Derek's network. One of those people had used a portion of my vendor contact methodology in a proposal they had pitched to a corporate client in Birmingham, a client I had been in early conversations with myself before the deal had inexplicably gone quiet. I sat with that for a long time. There was a moment, late on a Wednesday night, when I opened a blank document and started writing. Not a legal document, not a list of facts, just a post. Something honest, something I had been holding in my chest for a long time without knowing exactly what shape it was. I wrote about building a business alone in your 20s, about being the person in your family who figures things out and then becomes the person everyone quietly borrows from without asking. I wrote about the specific exhaustion of making beautiful things for people who describe your effort as lucky timing. I wrote about templates and access logs and a mother's toast that was supposed to be a compliment. I didn't name anyone. I didn't have to. I posted it on LinkedIn on a Thursday morning with my portfolio attached and a line at the bottom that read, "My work is my work. It always has been." I put my phone face down and went to a client meeting. By the time I got back, it had been shared 47 times. By the following morning, it was at 300 shares. A woman who ran a small business accelerator in Atlanta had quoted it and tagged a network of female entrepreneurs. A podcast host I had never heard of had reposted it with the caption, "This is what quiet theft looks like. Read this." Comments came in from strangers, dozens of them, then hundreds. Women in their 20s and 30s who said "me too" in different words. Women who described watching their ideas get picked up and walked away with by the people closest to them. Women who said they had never had a word for it before. My inbox started filling up. New client inquiries, speaking requests. A journalist from a regional business publication who wanted to write about under-resourced female founders in the events industry. And then Derek called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that was equal parts angry and defensive, ending with, "I can't believe you'd embarrass the family like this." I listened to it once, saved it to a folder, and moved on. My mother called the next day. Her voice was different, still controlled, but thinner somehow, like the performance had worn through in one small place. "People are talking about our family," she said. "People are talking about something that happened," I said. "Those aren't the same thing. You didn't have to go public." I didn't go public about the family. I went public about my work. I paused. "You could have said something at brunch, Mom. You could have said it wasn't okay. You didn't." Silence. "I'm not angry at you," I said, and I meant it. I was past angry. Anger required hoping things would be different. I had stopped hoping for that, but I'm also not going to keep shrinking myself to make this easier for everyone. She didn't respond. I heard her exhale, long and careful. "I love you," I said, "but I'm done explaining my worth to people who've already decided what I am to them." I hung up and sat on my apartment steps with my coffee, and let the morning settle around me. The street was quiet. A neighbor walked by with a dog. The air smelled like cut grass and something baking from the place 2 doors down. I hadn't cried through any of this. Not once, but sitting there, I felt something release. Not dramatically, not in a flood, just a slow letting go, like setting down a bag I had been carrying so long I had stopped noticing the weight. 2 weeks later, I did the journalist interview. We sat at a coffee shop near my office for 2 hours. I told the story plainly. I showed her the documentation, the timestamps, the before and after. She was careful and thorough. She asked about the toast, and I described it without bitterness, just facts. She wrote it down. The piece ran on a Friday under the headline, "She built it, they took it, now she's taking it back." My phone rang most of that day. Jordan called first, crying in the good way, laughing at the same time. 3 of my existing clients sent messages saying they were proud of me. A woman who ran a nonprofit in Knoxville reached out about planning their annual gala, the biggest event on their calendar. 2 photographers I had worked with years ago sent notes saying they would always choose me first. Derek posted nothing publicly, but someone in my network mentioned that his LLC had lost a partnership inquiry after the article circulated. I didn't share that information. I just noted it. Claire texted me privately. Not her usual cheerful style, shorter and more careful. I should have said something at the party. After Mom's toast. I know that. I'm sorry I didn't. I read it twice. Then I typed back. Thank you for saying that. It matters. I meant it. That was all I needed from her. Not a grand gesture. Just honesty. Just someone in my family willing to name what had happened. My father never reached out. That too was information. A month after the LinkedIn post, I woke up to a message in my business inbox from someone I didn't know. She was 24, just out of college, trying to launch a floral design business in Charlotte. She had seen the article, then read back through my posts, then found a free workshop I had recorded the year before, and left unlisted on my YouTube channel. She wrote, "I've been letting my older sister use my client list because I felt guilty saying no. She keeps saying it's not a big deal and I'm being selfish. After reading your story, I changed my password for the first time in 2 years. I don't know if that sounds dramatic. It felt huge. I sat with that message for a long time. Then I wrote back, it doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds like the beginning. Take care of what you built. No one else will." I added her to a list I had quietly started. Women I replied to directly. Women who needed to hear that what they were feeling had a name, and that the name wasn't selfishness or sensitivity. I didn't post about the list. It wasn't for show. It was just mine. Something small and real, and entirely my own. I also updated my business structure. New contracts with clearer language about intellectual property. New drive permissions with individual access rather than broad sharing. A separate folder for client-facing templates, and one for internal working documents that no one but me could touch. Not because I was afraid, because I was finally taking seriously what I had built. The engagement party now feels like a long time ago. The string lights, the wildflowers, the honey lavender cake. My mother's voice carrying across the room with its soft, cutting precision. I used to replay that moment and feel ashamed. Now when it surfaces, I feel something else, closer to gratitude, which I know sounds strange. Because if that night hadn't happened exactly the way it did, I might have kept going, kept planning, kept paying, kept making myself useful in ways that cost me more than they should. I might have gone another year without looking at my own drive. Sometimes you need a moment that bad to finally tell the truth. I still work in Nashville. My business is bigger now than it was before. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily. The way things grow when you stop giving pieces of them away for free. I have a second part-time assistant. I just signed a contract with a hotel group for 3 annual events starting next year. Jordan came to visit last month, and we sat on my back porch and laughed until the neighbors probably got curious. My mother and I talk occasionally. It's different now. She doesn't call me for favors the way she used to. There's a formality to it that I suspect we both understand without naming. I don't push for warmth she doesn't have to give. I don't reward sharpness with silence. We are honest in a flat kind of way, and for now, that is enough. Derek and I have not spoken. I am not particularly sad about that. Claire and I are finding something new, slower, and more careful than what we had before, but more real. She came by the office last week and asked if she could watch me work for a morning. She sat in the corner with her coffee and her notebook and asked real questions about contracts and vendor relationships and how I learned to price my services. She said, "I had no idea how much went into this." I said, "Most people don't." We left it there. There is something no one tells you about standing up for yourself inside your own family. They tell you it will feel good. They tell you about the power and the clarity and the moment you finally say what you've been swallowing for years. And those things are true. But what they don't tell you is how quiet it is afterward. There is no dramatic resolution, no scene where everyone apologizes and understands, and the family table becomes the safe place it was supposed to be. There is just you, on a Thursday morning, answering emails, drinking your coffee, building something that is yours. That is not a small thing. It is, actually, the whole thing. I spent years being the person who made things beautiful for people who barely acknowledged the effort. I don't do that anymore. Not out of anger, not out of scorekeeping, but because I finally understand what my work is worth, and I'm not interested in giving it away to people who have already decided it isn't that impressive. The woman in Charlotte who changed her password sent me a follow-up message 3 weeks later. She said she had landed her first real contract, a small wedding, 200 guests, but hers. She said she had used a pricing structure she found in one of my old posts. She said she had finally told her sister the client list was off limits. She ended with, "I know you probably get a lot of these messages, but this one is real." I wrote back one line, "They're all real. Keep going." I meant that for her. I also meant it for myself. There is still so much I want to build. So many events I haven't planned yet. So many tables I haven't set. I wake up most mornings feeling something I didn't have much of before. Space. Room in my chest where the anxious accommodation used to live. Room to be ambitious without apologizing. To protect what I've made, without explaining myself. To love my family with open eyes and appropriate distance. I don't need them to understand. I don't need them to agree. I don't need my mother to revise her toast or Derek, to send a letter, or my father to finally have an opinion. What I needed was to stop waiting for any of that. What I have now is better. If you've ever been the one who plans the dinner and gets thanked last, the one who builds the thing and watches someone else take the credit, the one who smiles through a joke that isn't a joke, I want you to hear this. Your work is not invisible just because they're not looking. Your effort is not small just because they describe it that way. And the fact that you kept going, kept building, kept showing up even when none of it was acknowledged, that is not weakness. That is the longest kind of strength. You don't have to blow anything up. You don't have to win a public argument, or get the last word, or wait for someone to finally see you clearly. You just have to decide that you see yourself. And then act like it. That's what I did on a Sunday morning in Nashville, with my coffee going cold, and a list of timestamps on my screen, and 4 years of my own work staring back at me from a folder someone had walked through without asking. I closed the door, and I started building something they couldn't follow me into. Drop a 1 in the comments if any part of this felt familiar. Or just tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know I'm not talking to empty air. And if this story meant something to you, stay around. There's more. Real stories, real stakes, and maybe something that helps you find your way back to yourself. Until next time, protect what you built. It matters more than they ever told you.